Hi, everyone, and welcome to the fifth episode of Bringing Heaven on Earth, my online video show. Today, I have another special, very special guest. But before that, I'll just want to let you know, for those of you who don't know me and don't know the concept of the show, you can go to my website, amazingconsciousness.com, and you can also find the links to the announcements of the show where I explain the concept and what I do and what kind of services I offer. You will also find the links to my other social media pages. So that's for that. Let me just start immediately because my guest is very busy and I'm so eager to introduce her to you. So my guest today is a very special person and dear person to me. Her name is Katherine Woodward Thomas. She is the author of the New York Times bestseller Conscious Uncoupling, 5 Steps to Living Happily Even After, and the national bestseller Calling in the One, 7 Weeks to Attract the Love of Your Life. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist and teacher to thousands from all corners of the world in her virtual and in-person learning communities. Katherine is also a featured teacher of Mind Valley, the online transformational educational giant. She also trains, credentials, and supervises people as certified conscious uncoupling coaches and the certified Calling in the One coaches, and supports them to develop thriving private practices as love and relationship coaches. I have been following Katherine for a long time now, probably around 10 years or so. I have and read the 2 books that she wrote, and I also went to her online course called Happy Even After. To me, she is my teacher, my mentor. I'm sorry if I get emotional, but I really love this person, someone I admire, someone who inspires me to become a better person, to make a contribution to this world and to be of service too. I'm really moved and touched because I'm so honored to have her today. She's, oh Katherine, you're crying too. She's a visionary and a love illusionary, as she likes to call herself, and all of those following her weekly newsletters. My God, Katherine. And I personally believe that she's changing the world as we speak with the work that she is doing. Her books have been translated in many languages, French included, at least Conscious Uncoupling, the book we will be talking about mostly today, for the French-speaking viewers and listeners out there. I personally have been working with both of her books, and it helped me on many levels, but especially her course that I have followed back in 2017 based on her second book, Conscious Uncoupling. It was a time when I was questioning my marriage and couldn't find a way to decide whether to leave or stay. I was more inclined to stay for many personal reasons and kind of denying all the facts showing me that I should actually leave my marriage, even though I was aware of them. So when I got the chance to follow the course, I offered it to my former husband to go through it together, which he kindly declined. So I decided that I'm going to go through it alone because I needed to do the work for myself, firstly and mostly. And so I secretly enrolled the course without his approval, and I found the most loving community of coaches and people, a virtual place that gave me the feeling of belonging somewhere. I mean, you can understand why I'm moved. Not to mention Katherine's kindness, her motherly, nurturing nature, her wisdom, professionalism, integrity, her knowledge and skills as a teacher, mentor, speaker, and you name it. This work and Katherine helped me to finally be able to face the truth about my marriage, break some behavioral patterns, find validation for other ones, gave me hope for the future, which I didn't have at the time I enrolled the course. It helped me to make a decision to leave my marriage, reinvent my life, and start all over again. Now, enough with this long presentation. I know you are all eager to meet her and to hear her wisdom. Dearest Katherine, welcome to my show. I am so thrilled and honored to have you. I am so grateful that you have accepted immediately my offer, and so excited to introduce you to my audience. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for everything. I'm sorry I've been moved and touched, but I really I didn't expect to get so emotional, but you know, I really love you so much. You have
Thank
helped me a
you.
lot in my life and your work, and you know,
Thank you, sweetheart.
welcome. How are you?
I have to say, I've never cried at an introduction before. That's the
Oh my
first
god.
time.
Oh my god. Oh,
It's so beautiful to
that's,
hear how meaningful the work has been to you. It's
yeah,
very touching to me. How much it's not only helping you, but now helping others because
yes,
you being well and empowered, you're paying it forward and you're helping other people to get well and empowered.
exactly. Yeah,
So
I'm
it's a ripple
trying.
effect. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
trying.
I see
I'm
that. I
trying.
see. It's beautiful.
Oh my God! Thank you so much for taking the time. Let's go through it because you told me that you have something immediately after. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and I have so many questions to ask you, but I really had to, you know, make a resume because of your time, of course. But
Thank you.
hopefully, we'll have another chance afterwards to,
Well,
later.
we can always come back for a part two.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And three
yeah.
and four. well, well, today, as I said, we will be mostly talking about conscious uncoupling. I just have one question that touches a little bit at the end, maybe calling in the one so that, you know,
Yeah.
or maybe not, you will tell me. But so my first question, Katherine, for you would be, what is your mission and purpose in life? And how do you see yourself as an ordinary person living an extraordinary life? This is one of the few questions I ask all of my guests. So,
That's beautiful. Um, I think when I was quite young, I decided that my life was about contribution. I really had a burning desire to contribute. And I think without articulating it back there, what I wanted to really contribute was healing and love. But it wasn't until I was in my 30s, I believe I was at a church service, and it was right when the book Chicken Soup for the Soul had come out.
mm-hmm.
And that was Jack Canfield, who
Yeah,
was the editor, along with Mark Victor Hansen.
yeah,
But Jack was the speaker that day, and nobody knew the book yet. So Jack was not very well known at the time.
mm-hmm.
But he told a story from the first book, and those of you who know that series know that it became like a mega best-selling series, and you had Chicken Soup
Exactly.
for the women's soul and Chicken Soup for the teenager soul and all sorts of offshoots from it. But the original book was just Chicken Soup for the Soul, and it was a series of little stories, vignettes. And one of the stories was about a woman who'd had a near-death experience,
Mm-hmm.
and she obviously lived to tell the tale. But what happened to her is she died, and she went through a tunnel of light, and she met an angelic being, and he asked her two questions. One is, um, what wisdom have you gained in this lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
And the second one was, how have you expanded your capacity to love?
Mm.
And when Jack told that story and articulated it, I remember just this feeling, like this quickening, like, yes, that's my purpose,
Mm.
is to expand my capacity to love and be loved, and to help others to expand their capacity to love and be loved. So that, from that moment on, I had a very clear North Star. I think it's very important to articulate our vision, our purpose,
Yeah.
because whatever happens to us, somebody lets us down, somebody betrays us, we get sick, we have some kind of a setback, an obstacle, a delay to our dreams, we experience a deep disappointment. it's good to know in that moment what your purpose is, because you can always say, okay, what would love do right now? Well, love might
Right.
forgive myself, or love might do, double dose self-care, or love might reach
Mm,
out with an olive branch and try and make peace with that person. So
mm,
when you know what your purpose is, it becomes the North Star that informs how you then show up. I will tell you that about 6 years ago,
mhm,
so that moment was, back 30 years ago now, or probably about 25 years ago. I'm
mhm.
63 now, or I don't know. I'm at the age where you forget. Am I 62 or 63? That's where I am. Maybe I'm
Who
62.
cares? You're 25 for me.
I think I just
With
turned 63.
with the wisdom of 63-year-old.
I'm at that delicious age where you forget how
Yeah,
old you are. Okay,
that's great.
so but 5 years, 6 years ago, I had breast cancer,
Yeah.
and when you have cancer, what happens is you go and you get, diagnosed, and you go through all the testing, and you're waiting kind of on pins and needles, or do I have cancer? Do I not have cancer? Are the results
Mm,
in? Are they not in? And then you get a call and you say, I'm sorry to inform you, but you do have cancer. And of course, the next question is, well, what stage is the
mm, mm,
cancer? Because you want to
mhm,
know, is this something that we caught early? Is it late stages? And the answer to that question is usually, well, we don't know. You'll have to see the doctor. We've scheduled an appointment in 3 days. So you have this 3 days of knowing that you have cancer, but you don't know how serious it is and if it's,
yeah.
something you can treat. So it's almost like, I imagine it might feel like if you're driving and you go off a cliff and you're just kind of in that slow motion free fall,
Mm,
like you don't know what's going to happen when you get to the bottom.
mm,
So, but during that period, I had a voice inside my soul talk to
mhm,
me.
mhm.
And what it said is, don't worry, you're not going to die from this cancer. This cancer was set up early on, before you incarnated,
Mhm.
because if you had not become the person you've become, our wounds can go either way. We can
Yeah.
either become a very miserable person, or we become kind of, now I'm not going to call myself enlightened because I'm not enlightened, but we can become a magnificent person, an
Yeah.
extraordinary person in our capacity to forgive, to
Mm,
love, to overcome. So the Spirit said to me, so if you had not become the person you'd become, it would have been a kind early exit. But because you have chosen love
mm,
so many thousands of times,
mm. Oh my
the
God, I got
cancer's going
chills.
to wash through you, and you'll remember it like a bad case of the hiccups.
Oh, and I
And
suppose that's
that's
the case.
exactly how it went. I went through the treatment. I have no repercussions. I'm completely healed, and I'm fine. And I remember it like a bad case of the hiccups.
Mm,
But that's the piece I wanted to share, is because you have chosen love so many thousands of times. So
mm,
that came out of that moment with Jack, of just saying, yes, that is my purpose. So sometimes we confuse our work with our purpose, or we confuse our role in life with our purpose, but it's a broader purpose. We can love no matter what. You can
yeah.
love as a waitress, as a mother, as a caregiver, as a
Mm,
teacher.
mm.
It's all the same. It's all service.
Yeah. And how do you see as an ordinary person living an extraordinary life?
Well, I think we're all kind of ordinary people, but we have the capacity to live an extraordinary mission, which
Mm-hmm.
pulls on us to be noble, and which pulls on us to be good, honest, to have integrity.
Right.
All of those things are extraordinary. And
Mm-hmm.
then what we create out of that
Mm-hmm.
is, a beautiful contribution. But we're all here to do the best we can with whatever playing field we have. I love that saying, bloom where planted.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a waitress, if you're a waitress with love,
Mm-hmm.
a waitress with dignity and with service, or you're, a caregiver, or somebody who's doing kind of a simple job, what we call a chop wood, carry water
Mm-hmm.
job in the Buddhist world, chop wood, carry water, and do it with great love, then
Mm.
that's extraordinary. And
Exactly.
because of that, you're faithful in that, you will be given more
Mm-hmm.
responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I have thousands of people now that I get to be with, and even, this beautiful moment with you, is because um, whatever I did, whatever I was given to do, I did with love. Because for many years I was a temp secretary, I was a waitress for 15 years. I did things
Yeah.
um, while I was growing and healing myself,
Mm.
but I did them with love.
Mm.
And that then that just becomes, it just gets bigger and bigger. Life trusts you with more and more when you
Yeah.
are able to be faithful in that way.
Yeah. Thank you, Catherine. Well, as I already mentioned, so in my introduction, we will be focusing and talking more about conscious uncoupling today. I see calling in the one behind you, so people
Yeah,
can see.
actually, that's conscious
Ah,
uncoupling
gotcha.
up
Yeah,
there,
yeah, I haven't seen
but
that
it's the hard cover, so
one.
you don't
Yeah,
see it as much because
and
now
it's
it's a teal
but
book.
yeah, I have it. I have the allez, I
The
have the
paperback
kin.
is a teal.
No, I don't have the
Oh, you
paperback. I
have the
have the
Kindle.
yes, yes, and it's
Yeah, okay.
it's green like
Yeah,
or
yeah, it's
yeah.
like that teal
Yeah,
green,
so I
yeah.
haven't noticed the white one, sorry. But I noticed the picture you have behind with the statue. I love it. I love the colors and everything. So,
Yeah.
so great. And so we will be talking about conscious uncoupling, as I said, which is the book and the work that have changed my life for the better and gave me hope for for my life and for the future. But before I ask you my next question, I would like to introduce this topic by citing a quote from your book that I have found just yesterday morning while I was doing my morning rituals in one of my journals with the how do you say the like the question for the day was the quotation of the day, and I just saw that quote that I wrote that I took from your book in back in 2017 when I was following the course Happy Even After, and the quote says, and I think it's the perfect opening for this conversation. So it goes, while we cannot protect ourselves from being hurt in life, we can certainly escape becoming captivated by loss by choosing to make something beautiful of it. Such is the opportunity of a broken heart. Katherine Woodward Thomas in her book Conscious Uncoupling. It certainly made an impression on me back in 2017, and I really hope it will make on others too. But first of all, I want us also to make it clear to our audience that you are not advocating divorce and separation at any price. I think it's very important that that people get clear on this, and I explain why. It's not at all what your work is all about. You are advocating divorce and separation only when there is nothing left to be done to save the relationship, when the two have the feeling of completion in regards to that, meaning that they both believe they have tried anything they could to save their relationship or marriage. And I'm sure you will confirm that, Catherine. But before you do, let me ask you my question, and so you can elaborate on both afterwards if you don't mind. Now, I would like you to talk about fear-based relationships, if you want, if you will. What is your take on that? Your perspective, your advice, and whatever else you wish and have to say about them. I have been living myself for a long time in such relationship, and I know and hear all the time about people living in a fear-based relationships, even those that are separated or divorced, but the other partner always, finds a way to get to them in whatever form that might be. And at the same time, please also talk a bit about the effects that this behavior have on the education of their children, because I think this is extremely important to emphasize it.
Wow.
Long introductions, long
Well,
questions.
it's a
Catherine, sorry.
beautiful topic. You're going right to the heart of it. And I have to say that one of the major books that I learned from in this area
Mm-hmm.
is Emotional Blackmail
I
by
don't know that.
Susan Forward, who's just an extraordinary. And she talks about relationships that are characterized by what she calls fog: fear, obligation, guilt,
Mm.
and that those are the cornerstones of toxicity. And it's very important to be able to name that the manipulation that's happening in emotional blackmail, where
Mm.
somebody is showing up in these toxic ways with, gaslighting, or character assassination is another one that will be a form of manipulation. Um, Certainly never taking responsibility, always turning blame around to
Mm.
you. But I think where our focus is, certainly in conscious uncoupling and in the work that we're doing, is what is my part? Yes, maybe the other person is a narcissistic personality
Right.
or a very toxic
Mm.
person, but that's the person I'm with. So I
Mm-hmm.
like to
And that
say,
I
even if
choose.
it's right, and I chose that person.
Mm.
And so even if it's 97% the other person, I really want to look at my 3%, and that's where my main focus needs to be.
Mm.
How I minimized the red flags, how I thought I was going to save someone or rescue someone, how I get my self-esteem from overgiving,
Mm-hmm.
and I think so little of myself that I give to prove my value. The very low expectations I have of reciprocity. All of these things are my 3%. That I minimize red flags. All of these things are very, very critical to see,
Yeah.
because I can get out of the relationship. I can say, oh, that person's a toxic person.
Mm.
And so I can see I have the sun coming in.
Yeah,
I'm
me too.
sorry.
Yeah.
So I can see I have a toxic person here. I'm going to get rid of that person. And we think that that's just it. No, because unless you change your 3%, you're probably going to wind up with somebody with a very similar dynamic. So
Mm.
we have to look at how we're giving our power away in relationship,
Right.
how we are defining ourselves according to the approval of other people or the disapproval of other people, how we get so terrified that someone's going to leave us that we begin to disappear ourselves and sacrifice our own integrity in order to try and keep the peace with someone, to the point where we lose ourselves in relationship. The only way it's ever going to change is to look at our 3%. So we want to really clearly name that. And where we want to get to is, you recognize that the amends that needs to happen is not that anybody else needs to ever apologize. I mean, it's nice if people do, but it's really not necessary. What we need to do is apologize to ourselves
Mm.
for the ways that we devalued ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and the ways that we borrowed against our own well-being, as though that was an option
Yeah.
in order to be in a relationship, or the way that we gave our power away because we were so desperate for someone to do something for us that we thought we couldn't do for ourselves.
Mm.
So we've organized around our own weaknesses, and that's where the transformation happens. That's where we have to get to the point where we say to ourselves, I will never, ever, ever give my power away like that to anyone.
Yeah.
I will grow myself
Mm.
healthy and strong within, so that I can tolerate someone disapproving of me or someone doing a character assassination, and not bend in order to keep my own integrity, to live my own truth, even if they leave, even if they punish me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So sometimes, conscious uncoupling, sometimes people do come in like you did, like, I don't know if I'm going to keep the connection or not. And we work on that 3%.
Yeah.
Sometimes people
I
change
remember
that
that.
3%, and the
Exactly.
relationship changes and it gets healthier, because you're not organizing around the weakest person in the room. You're calling on everyone to rise in greater levels of health. And sometimes the other person rises and sometimes they don't. And so
Yeah.
you have to be unattached to the outcome, but you have to get to a point where you say, I will not live this way anymore, where I am borrowing against my own integrity and my own truth. I will live in my truth. And as you said, I'm not about breakups. I'm
No.
about love. And
Yes.
most breakups are very hostile and very angry, because we take a shortcut in the pain of separation, and we devalue the other person, or we devalue the relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and which helps in the short term, but we don't grow because then we're pointing our finger to the other 97% and we're not looking at our 3%.
3%. Yeah.
Relationships are always co-created. So the promise of conscious uncoupling is that you will be able to use your broken heart to become a better person, a stronger person,
Mm-hmm.
a person who has more integrity and more clarity and greater health, so you can love the next time in a completely different way, and you can be loved in a completely different way, and you will trust yourself to never make those same mistakes again moving forward.
Yeah, and also be assertive. That's what helped me also to become more assertive at that time, at that point, and express myself more clearly. So our communication became a bit better because I could clearly say what was what I didn't like, what I needed, and what I wanted, and then from
And
there
was
we
he
we
able
could.
to hear that?
Yes, because I found a different way of expressing that, instead of blaming and criticizing, etc.
Right.
I found the way where he can hear that
Yeah,
and
because you were
and take it and accept.
self-responsible.
Yeah,
You were self-responsible.
yeah, yeah. And but what would you say about when the other person is the one who is always blaming and criticizing you, and and you are um, you always have to like walk on eggshells, and even after the breakup, and when they try to get you in any way, and
Yeah.
what message would you give to those people who are dealing still with those kinds of.
Well, one of the things you're going to look at when you look at your 3% is your
Mhm.
tendency to be overly responsible for the bad behavior of other people,
Okay, explain that a
right?
little bit, please.
Well, so a lot of these dynamics that get set up, you're talking about having been in a relationship for a while and then having experienced a lot of, multiple experiences of being the one who was wrong and blamed and the other person never taking responsibility. They didn't change very much. They were that person on the first date, the second date, the third date, the fourth date, the fifth date, the sixth date.
Yeah.
Is you didn't notice because you are so comfortable taking the blame for other people. So the dynamic gets set up early on. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of what we're dealing with when we're dealing with these very painful situations, these impossible situations, really, are because it's an impossible situation, because you realize, oh, in order to stay in this relationship, I have to sign a contract to be sick in my soul.
Mm.
I have to never become a healthy person to stay here.
Mm.
And for most of us, that's not going to work. So we're going to have a very painful separation. But in the reviewing process, you have to say, what was the first time that it happened? And how was I overly responsible for what happened? How was it okay with me to always be the one
Mm-hmm.
that was wrong, that needed to change, that needed to fix something? How did I smooth things over at my own expense early on in the relationship? Because basically what needs to happen is you need to get to a point in the next relationship where you learn the skill of being self-responsible, but also recognizing what is not yours.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And
And
not
then
taking
actually holding other people accountable
from that.
in a way that is oriented towards repair.
Right.
Okay, now that's a skill. So there's a lot of skills that we need to learn. This is because
Mm-hmm.
Calling in the One and Conscious Uncoupling are also very much about what's the missing skills. That
Mm-hmm.
if I knew how to do that,
Exactly.
it's going to have it go better next time.
Yeah. Thanks
So
for
so
pointing
the
that out.
well, and you just shared one with us, which is I learned how to speak my truth without blaming someone
Yeah.
so that they could actually hear it. And that's going to have to do with saying something in a self-responsible way, which looks like, for those of you who are confused about that, that
Mm.
might look like, I have, rather than blaming, which is, you take up all the space in the room and I never get to have my opinion.
Mm.
I never get to feel safe to speak my truth,
Yeah.
which is now you've blamed the other person for that.
Mm-hmm.
You might say something like, I have been terrified of speaking up and saying my truth. I have lacked the courage to do that, inside of a fear that you would blow up at me or be angry or punish me or withhold your love from me or
Mm.
maybe even leave. But I am finding that I am making myself sick and I am making our relationship sick
Mm.
because I am not speaking truth.
Right.
And so from this moment forward, I'm going to start to do things differently. And I would love it if you could try and stretch and hear it when I have the courage, because it's very frightening for me to speak what
Mm-hmm.
I think is true. But whatever you respond, I have to speak truth now. Right? So that's very self-responsible.
Yeah.
And it could actually have the other person say, okay, I want to hear your truth. I
Mm.
want to hear what you have to say. I don't want us to be sick anymore.
Mm.
So there's this missing development. So we're learning the new skills and we want to identify them and stretch ourselves to learn them. Sometimes they end up repairing the relationship, and sometimes they end up evolving us right out of the
Out of
relationship,
it, yeah.
which is what
But
happened.
yes, but that, for everybody out there, by calling in the one, by conscious uncoupling, go through the courses with Katherine, and you will learn all those missing skills, and uh, and you will be fine. Because me personally, I had a very friendly divorce. I finally arrived to that after many years of trying, and it's really your work that helped me to arrive there, because I couldn't see any other way. Even if I needed to divorce, I couldn't see any other way than that one, and I really achieved that, and I'm so grateful to you and to your work. That's why I get emotional, and
Yeah.
um and
Yeah.
to
Well,
myself
I think that's
for
amazing that you created that.
doing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's
you
amazing.
did as well. You're the first example
Yeah, yeah,
of your
I
work.
did as well. Very peaceful separation with my husband, as I
Husband,
affectionately
yeah, I saw
call him,
that
my
recently,
husband.
that you call him
But
like that. Yeah.
but I want to say something. I want to share this distinction because you did ask a great question. What if somebody's constantly blaming you? So if people have a shared
Yeah.
community or shared children,
Yeah, that's a
it's
very
very
important.
hurtful. You're trying to co-parent with somebody who's always blaming, always making you wrong. You're
Yeah.
changing, they're not changing.
Yeah.
So I think one of the main so I want to distinguish something about conscious uncoupling.
Hmm.
Conscious uncoupling is not a pain-free breakup.
It's never a pain-free breakup, but
We we are born to bond. We are bonding creatures. I'm bonding with you right now. Right? We're getting close. We feel love. We feel connected. So we're like that as human beings.
mm,
So when you lose someone, you end a relationship, it's going to be painful. However, if it's healthy, the pain goes away in a relatively short amount of time. For a healthy person, time does heal all wounds. You
mm,
kind of, you bounce back. We're resilient creatures. We heal easily. We take care of ourselves. We get better. We reflect. We learn. Where we get snagged, where we get into what we psychotherapists call complicated grief.
mm-hmm,
Prolonged grief is another word for it, where you don't quite get over the breakup,
mm-hmm,
or where the breakup causes you to dim down and shut down, and maybe you're in danger of never opening your heart again for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years,
mm,
is when we make meaning of of ourselves and of the, what's happening. That kind of goes back into an old early childhood wounding. I'm not good enough. I'm not safe to love.
yeah,
I'm destined to be alone in this lifetime.
mm,
So, where we get into trouble is when someone is projecting onto us
mm-hmm,
their hatred, their rage, they're devaluing us, they're blaming us, and it's constant. And we hook into that by taking that on, having it validate an old insecurity. See, I'm not good enough, or I am a bad person, or I'm not safe to love because I do hurt other people. It's not safe for me to love anyone because I'll hurt them.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at in conscious uncoupling is also, where do you go when someone's blaming you? Do you still hold your
Mm-hmm.
integrity and your power and your value? Because here's the truth. You're a person worthy of love. You're a person who is worthy of being loved even when someone else is not loving you. You're a person who is worthy of respect even when someone else is acting in a disrespectful way.
Mm.
You're a person who is innocent even when someone's blaming you. That's a very high level place to go.
Yeah.
That's extraordinary. But it begins by becoming aware of what we call your source fracture wound in step 3
Mm.
of conscious uncoupling,
We go through that, yeah.
and recognizing what's the meaning you're making of the breakup, what's the story you're telling yourself, and waking yourself up out of that story
Mm.
to recognize it's not actually true. So then if somebody has, a need to blame you, they're not going to do conscious uncoupling. I think when Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin kicked it into the public awareness, everybody thought it's for two people doing it together, but usually conscious uncoupling is like you just did it. One person does it, the other
Yeah.
person
You do
doesn't.
the work for yourself, first
You
of
do
all.
it for yourself, and maybe the other person comes around and maybe they don't come around. Um, and you see that as just part of their immaturity, really, that
Mm.
they are not in a place developmentally where they can take personal responsibility
Mm.
for their flaws and their failures that they
Yeah.
are going to project. I actually see, over the years I've worked with so many people, my definition of mental health is the ability to take personal responsibility for yourself and what you're creating
Mm.
by how you're showing up or not showing up. To actually be able to reflect in a way where you can see that without going into self-hatred and self-blame. You can just see it objectively, and you can actually use it to grow yourself healthier. That's the definition of mental health. The definition for me of what we call personality disorders is the inability to self-reflect, because you go so into shame and so into self-hatred that you can't
Mm-hmm.
take any responsibility for yourself. So if somebody is there, we're not going to have a lot of leverage on
Mm.
that. Everybody's responsible for how quickly they're going to grow or not grow. And then you just have to deal with it. You just have to know, okay, well, that's not a battle I'm going to win with that person. And if you're co-parenting,
Yeah.
keep having to bring yourself back to the prize, which is having healthy children, having happy children. So you might have to do double duty and be
Mm.
responsible for having created children with somebody who has this kind of personality problem,
Mm-hmm. But and
right?
but what is your advice? How to deal with the other partner?
Well, if
Do
somebody is
they?
that fragile in their personality that they can't take responsibility, you're going to find yourself complimenting them a lot. I appreciate what you did this. You're a
Okay,
wonderful
right.
father here. Thank you for taking them out every Sunday.
Find all
That means the
the
world.
minor
Yeah, because that's
things
their
that they do
language.
well. Yeah.
They need a lot of that to be okay. And
Mm.
the moment you start to, threaten them by trying to hold up a mirror that they should see certain things about themselves, they're going
Not
to go
gonna
to
work.
war. They're going to go
Yes.
to war. But it's really not about you. It's
No.
about the mechanism in them and how
Yeah.
much, they go into shame, how much they need to be constantly bolstered up to be a good
Mm.
person. So
Mm.
they're not developmentally ready yet to look at that themselves clearly. And the goal is not to get them to look at themselves clearly, and the goal is not for them to finally vindicate that you're right, and the goal is not for them to finally get on with you. The goal is to be free, for you to be free, for you to never create that dynamic again, and then to raise healthy children or keep a cohesive community for the well-being of everybody to the best of your ability.
Yeah, because
Sometimes we have to
mhm.
grow our wisdom in this
Yeah,
regard.
exactly. Because I see people, out of fear, because the other person is always attacking, they base their education on their children out of fear. Like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, because they are afraid that, for example, the mother or the father will after that blame them if the child hurt themselves, or if whatever happens, it will be their fault. And so out of fear, they create fear in uh, within the child.
Yeah. It's
So sad.
no small matter
No.
to be growing yourself healthy after an unhealthy relationship. It will take a lot of focus and a lot of commitment, and then it will take clarity to manage that relationship until you get to when the children are older and adult. But even adults, children have a very hard time with their parents' divorce, and they can feel emotionally homeless when their parents divorce if they don't do it well.
Yeah.
I think when we're talking about children, we have to remember that home is not a physical dwelling. Home is a relationship. We're home in the relationship we have with each other. So if the parents go to war, even if it's a cold war, and they're just not going to really talk to each other, you want to really do your best to create a new kind of friendship with that person. But it reminds me of that the saying in Alcoholics Anonymous, that beautiful serenity prayer: God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change and the courage to change the things I can. So I can't really change another person, but I can change myself and how I'm relating to that person and the meaning I'm making of that exchange and how I'm going to respond. That part I can change.
Yeah. Taking responsibility again for yourself and for your life.
Keeping the focus on you.
On you, yeah. Okay, let's go to the following. The following question, my dear Katherine, is about the internal agreements that we make and keep, and that prevent us from making the right decision for ourselves and our lives.
Yeah, that's a big piece of calling in the one, actually.
It is?
Yeah, I mean, agreements come
in. Internal, it was in calling in the one.
Oh, yeah, it's in step 2 of calling in the one, completing the past. Because we look at what are your obstacles to love, and what are your obstacles to love? And because we're always looking at, well, how am I the source? If you're single chronically and you don't want to be single, you tend to blame things like my astrological chart, or there's no crazy dating culture, or or my parents screwed me up too much. We blame things outside of ourselves. So in calling in the one of the first things that we do to access the power to change is, well, how is this happening through
me and not to
me?
Yeah.
How am I the source of chronically being single? Now, that's a crazy question for somebody who really wants to be in a relationship, because you feel like I'm ready. I want this. I'm not doing anything. But if you start to really dig deep, there are covert internal ways that we're actually inconsistent with what it is that we desire to create. And one of the inconsistencies is this section of old agreements. What are the agreements you made with yourself, with others? And the agreements, because agreements serve as intentions, and we can even forget we made them, but they're very powerful when we make them. So I'm never going to let myself be hurt like that again. I'll never open up to anyone like that again. Right? That's an agreement we make in a moment of passion, or an agreement to a former love. You're the great love of my life. I will never love anyone like I love you. Spoken in a moment of passion. Or an agreement that we had with our sister: you can be the beautiful one, I'll just be the smart one. You go and shine, I'll be the wallflower.
But for me, it was an internal agreement that I made with myself long before I even met my former husband, which was, if I ever marry, it will be for life. And so my question was around that, because for me it was a great breakthrough when I was doing the course Happy Even After. And I also want to confirm to everybody that I am happy even after, for those of you out there wondering. But
That's great.
so at the beginning of your course, I remember when you were telling us all the reasons why it's better and healthier for us to leave a toxic relationship or marriage, whatever, and I was like internally always like, but shouldn't we, shouldn't marriage be for life? Shouldn't love be eternal? Didn't we agree to be and stay with each other for better or for worse? You see how stuck I was with this internal agreement that if I marry, it has to be for life. So my question was around that, but you expand it on calling in the one. But if you have something else to add, please do so.
Well, it is in conscious uncoupling, you're right. In step 5, I talk about what are the agreements that the old relationship was founded upon, because all relationships are built on agreements.
Yeah.
It's the foundation. We have an agreement. We make agreements with each other. And part of when we're talking about happy even after, we're talking about really becoming clear about the agreements that we're operating inside of, even on an unconscious level, because agreements have much to do with what our expectations are, and expectations have everything to do with whether we're happy or not. So if we're constantly still operating out of the agreement, like if I marry for life, and then you get unmarried,
and I was sticking to it, like,
right, so there's this feeling like, and so if
I
you're
have to
doing
stay.
that,
I have to make it
then
work. I have to.
then you're out of integrity with yourself because you're keeping the agreement. Or if you break the agreement, now you're miserable and depressed because you have failed.
That's what's my biggest problem, and it was my biggest breakthrough that helped me to to make the decision. Okay, this is not working. I have to leave. I have to break this agreement. I have to. That helped me. The course helped me a lot, and your work because I was really stuck there.
Yeah. So in my work, what we do is we make the agreement conscious, and then we say, is that an agreement you want to keep, or is it an agreement you want to now evolve?
Yeah.
And what would the new agreement be? So what's your new agreement?
My new agreement. Oh my God, I don't remember, but what I put at that time. But I suppose it should be, that that it will be for life if it's, on both. How do you say that? Both sided.
Mutual.
Mutual. If it's mutual and healthy, and as long as it is healthy and mutual and.
So the new agreement then is how I'm hearing what you're saying, is that my relationships must be healthy and mutually satisfying in order for me to continue to invest my love and my life force.
Yeah.
That's the new agreement, that you are committed to health and you are committed to love and well-being and happiness.
Yeah.
And that your relationships need to be healthy.
That's the first thing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big shift. And that if they're going to end, then you end them consciously and kindly.
Exactly, yeah. Oh, that's for sure. No other way.
So there's actually completion, because most of us end it like a severing. And I always love that Merritt Malloy once said, relationships that do not end peacefully do not end at all.
This is big.
Yeah, so we, just because you give someone the keys to the condo back doesn't mean the relationship is over, because now they're living inside of you. You're having conversations with them, in your head and your mind. You're restless with resentment. You have a lot of feelings about them. You wish you could pick up the phone, or all of those things. Or maybe you do pick up the phone every once in a while, but it's a restlessness. It's not completion.
No.
That's an incomplete relationship. And then you take that into your next relationship, because you're not complete with the last one. So a lot of conscious uncoupling is just really the art of conscious completion. How to actually complete
how beautifully you put that. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Catherine, I would like to talk a bit about the grieving process of a relationship and the 5 stages of the grieving process, which are denial, anger, bargaining, or negotiating, depression, and acceptance. I know this is not the focus of your work, but you do mention it in your work as well. And I think it's very important because it is an integral part of the whole process. We all go through this grieving process. What tips would you give to those going through such period, whether it is during or after a separation or a divorce, Catherine?
Well, I think it's a big trauma, actually. Breakups are a big trauma, particularly if you're the person who's being left. If you're the one who's leaving, you're not as traumatized because you've been thinking about it for a while. You've had an opportunity to adjust yourself to build an identity outside of the relationship. But many people who have been left feel quite shattered by the experience. And so they are going to go through those early stages of anger and bargaining and denial. This can't be happening. You have to come back. Well, what if I change? You know, all of those things are very normal stages to go through, and they're very difficult stages. I think, you know, depression is not so bad, even though we all hate to be depressed, but it's moving towards acceptance. It's like depression is kind of like you're getting deflated. Oh, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna be fixable. And so then you get a little deflated, but it's moving you towards that place of acceptance. I would say that my friend David Kessler worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who
You
created the
mentioned them a lot,
thing with,
yeah.
yeah, those 5 stages of grief. And actually, it was 5 stages of dying. She was working with people who were dying, and then they became the 5 stages of grief because she recognizes that she recognized, she's no longer with us, but she recognized that they apply to any loss. But he just came out with another book about the 6th stage, which is meaning.
Oh, really? There is
That
a 6th stage now.
there is now a 6th stage,
Okay.
and
Meaning,
he had
right,
to get blessings from her family, her estate, to come out with that book. But he
right.
did write 2 books with her. He was very close with her.
Hmm.
And meaning is beautiful. Like, how do we actually pay forward our losses? And I think a
Yeah.
lot of conscious uncoupling is about that 6th stage. It's definitely
Yes.
shepherding the first 5 stages, but it's really about that 6th stage of how to make meaning, how to make
Out
beauty out of
all of it.
everything hard that happened to you. For some people, if you were in a domestic violence situation, for example, how you make meaning is maybe you volunteer at a shelter, you create a program for other people who are recovering. You have to pay forward in some way that is
Mm.
meaningful. You know, the pain that we go through, the hurts, the disappointments, the shatterings can feel so big. And where much of the healing happens is when we make a contribution to the world of equal or greater value.
That's the part when you speak about reinventing your life.
Exactly. And how you
The
reinvent
last,
your life
yeah.
is now going to be different because you
Yeah.
want to pay forward the wisdom that you
Mhm.
have gained from this
Yeah.
experience and the lessons learned.
Right. Well, you have been talking a little bit about, the steps of conscious uncoupling. There are 5 steps. Let's mention them so that people. So, do you want me to do it, or do you want?
Yeah, I have 2 minutes because I have another call just at the
Oh
top
my
of the
God.
hour. I know. So, but there are five steps, and one is finding emotional freedom,
Mm,
which, is a radical thing to say in the midst of a breakup because we're experiencing everything but. So I teach certain techniques like that are going to help you to contain and actually transform those negative emotions into a positive force of change.
mm,
Step 2 is about reclaiming your power and your life, and that has to do with how we begin to take personal responsibility in a way that
yeah.
feeds us power. So rather than make ourselves wrong, it actually feeds us power and helps us to see that 3% in an empowered way,
Mm-hmm,
so that we can make amends to ourselves moving forward.
mm-hmm,
Step 3 is breaking the pattern and healing your heart. And it really is to see the meaning that you're making
yeah.
and going back to that, seeing how that goes back into that source fracture story
Mm-hmm,
and waking yourself up from that story so you can heal it once and for all and not duplicate it again moving forward.
Yeah.
And then steps 4 and 5 are about now dealing with the person, becoming a love alchemist, how to transform the field through forgiveness between yourself and that person and bring completion and
Mm-hmm.
align on a new future. And step 5, creating your happy even
Even
afterlife,
after.
which has to do with aligning your agreements and setting up structures so that everyone can win moving forward.
Yeah.
I do have a starter kit for people who want to find out more. It's a
Mm-hmm.
free starter kit just to get people on the pathway or to give them a taste of it so they can experience it for
Okay.
themselves. It's right at consciousuncoupling.com.
.com. I have a burning question. I really have to ask this question, and then I'll leave the other, but just briefly. What is your say about the mysterious connections? It might be a question for calling in the one or another topic of another book of yours that you will write, but the mysterious connection when you don't know why you are connected to a person, like you hear their voice and you start pouring yourself out, you start crying and you don't know what is happening.
Well, you know what?
What
It's
is
a
your say?
beautiful question, but I'm going to tell you that I'll come back again. I actually don't want to keep this other person waiting.
Okay.
And it's a really important question. So that's our cliffhanger for the next time we
For
speak.
the next, okay.
But you're talking about a very, very deep phenomenon, and I don't want to rush over or give you a pat answer for it.
Okay. So we will have
Ah,
to meet soon.
we will meet again
Next week.
soon.
Oh my God. We have to, because this is really a burning question for me
Yeah,
lately,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I
Maybe
really
next
want
month. Maybe
next
next
month.
month. It's been
Okay,
lovely to be
let's
with
try.
you.
Oh my God, oh, you have
It's
no
been
idea
lovely to
how.
be with you, and I love just my love to everyone who's with us. And
Thank you,
but
thank you,
come to
thank you, thank you so much.
consciousuncoupling.com and come join us, and we're
Yes.
happy to support you. Okay.
Okay, and we'll try to have you so soon, so we
Okay.
can talk
Thank
about the
you.
other. Thank you so much, Katherine. Mwah.
Bye. Bye
Bye.
bye.
Thank you. I will just say goodbye to my. So, everybody, I hope you are thrilled to have met my teacher and my mentor, Katherine Woodward Thomas. I hope you will read her books and join her classes for those of you who are ready to go through this work. And you will meet her lovely community of coaches and students, and really experience what I have experienced with her, and while doing her work, going through the work that she's proposing, actually doing the work for myself. And I really hope that we will have her very, very soon again to discuss some other questions that I would like to ask her. I have so many questions to ask her. But in the meantime, please share this video, because you never know who in your environment might have the need to hear the messages that we try to convey to you. And I'll see you next time with another guest in French, I think. Yeah, English then French, probably next month or whenever I have the time to do this. I try to do this every month, but it's not always possible. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for sharing the videos, and I'll see you next time. Stay well. Bye bye.